If you're expecting a bunch of guru fluff and get-rich-quick garbage, you've come to the wrong place. This show is the no bullshit real deal.
No bullshit real deal.
I'm Larry Harbolt, and they call me the real deal. Welcome to my show. This show is aimed at providing you with quality information so you can make more profit in the fastest way possible without making costly mistakes from the deals you do.
Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. I want to talk about something that I think is very, very important that I fell prey to many years ago that I don't ever want you to fall into that same category as I was, because you simply believed when someone told you something, it to be the truth. Now, I've talked about many, many times about how I started in the real estate business. No money, no credit. I had no training, that I learned by making mistakes, an ugly way to learn anything. Twice in my life, I made two major mistakes, and those mistakes were in 1986, I bought an 8-cabin resort on a lake. And at that time, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't understand how to sufficiently research any of the properties that I bought. So I talked to the seller. He would give me seller financing terms. And I asked for a list of the people that come to stay at the resort. It was a seasonal. I got from Memorial Day through Labor Day. And the way he talked, there was never an opening from one to the other. It was always full. And so I wanted a list of everybody that come. I wanted a list of all of the expenses, taxes, what they paid for insurance. I knew what my payment to them was. So I figured I had it pretty well figured out. And based on that, I decided to buy it. I bought it on what's known as a land contract. So, because I believed what the man told me, once I bought it and started working it, I didn't realize how much work there was because I was not educated in how to run a place like that. That's an intensive job, something I didn't want. Well, number one, he gave me a list of people that come and stay at the resort, but what I didn't realize was that was a list of everybody that had ever stayed there. I just didn't know that because he never told me. You see, I'm an honest person. When I tell you something, that's the way it is. I expect people to do the same with me, but they don't always. So what he was doing is he was pumping blue sky up my you-know-what. He was telling me a bunch of crap to get the property sold because he was getting older and he didn't want it anymore. Well, because I didn't know how to do my research, I believed him. So I had that property for 10 years. And like I said, he lied about the customer list. He lied about the expenses. He lied about how much work it took to take care of that place. And another thing, he didn't tell me about how the property next door on the lake, when there were heavy rains, how the rains funneled down and flooded my property. And so the people at the resort, when there were heavy rains, even after it quit raining, they couldn't go out and enjoy the area, the campfire area, because it would flood and it would take a day or two for that water to go away. I never knew that until I bought it. So I guess I found out the hard way that you don't want to listen to somebody that's telling you just what they want to tell you and you don't follow up. It was a struggle for my wife and I to take care of that property. And from the mistakes I made, I learned I needed to do a better job of doing my research before I bought anything. Now, that experience gave me a lot of thought. We worked hard. Like I said, we had that resort 10 years. I had made a good deal price-wise, but the hidden things are what cost us a lot of money. every Saturday, the people that did come to stay, on Saturday, the people that had been there for a week, they left at 10 in the morning. The new people coming in came in at 2 in the afternoon. So we had 4 hours to clean all of those cottages. My wife would exchange the laundry, take the dirty laundry home. I had to rake the beach. And one of the things that I had a real problem with, I used to tell the people, do not feed the ducks and the geese. So what did they do? They all fed the ducks and the geese, and then they would complain that they couldn't use the beach because the ducks and the geese had whitewashed it. So I had to rake the beach area, the sand. I had to clean out the boats. I had to mow the lawn, and it was very hilly. It was a lot of work. I had to fix any minor maintenance. I had to deliver firewood. And I learned, I took a complete truckload of firewood to this place. And 2 days later, they called me up and said they needed more firewood. And I said, that's impossible. What they had done is they had built a big bonfire, burn up a truckload of firewood, even scorched the limbs on the tree that was close to that. So I learned, you take over a small amount every few days. More work. Well, that's how I learned from mistakes. And don't think you're not going to make mistakes if you don't do your research. That is definite. So I felt I'd learned a lesson. Well, while I still owned the resort, in 1990, my wife found a convenience store that she wanted to buy. And so, I'm a lot wiser now. And so when I was negotiating with the sellers, we negotiated a good price, I thought. And so, being the smarter investor, I said I would like a statement from their CPA with the numbers of the sales, the expenses of that store over the last 2 or 3 years. And I thought, that's pretty smart. The CPA will give me something I can look at, I can analyze, and I'll determine from that if I want to buy the property. Well, I got the thing from their CPA. Now, I don't know what store those numbers were related to, but it surely wasn't the one I bought. Even though we had more sales than they did, our profit margin was nothing like what they said they had projected. So they might have created that statement themselves. So a word to the wise, if you're ever going to buy a business and you want to know what the numbers are, the real numbers, when you talk to the seller, have them provide 3, 4, or 5 years of their tax returns to show the numbers. I think you might get a little bit better idea of what the numbers are, even though people hide stuff, but I think it's a better reflection. I've learned the hard way, and I don't want to go through that again. I understood that I needed to do more research. I needed to know the circumstances, why the seller was selling. Both of these properties I bought, the sellers were really eager to sell. And so they were going to tell me anything they had to get me to buy the property. And I was dumb enough to listen. This may not apply to everybody, but I want you to understand, even the best of us have made mistakes in our life, and I don't want you to have to make those same mistakes. So, with that store, we struggled for 2 years. My wife worked 90 hours a week because you couldn't hire help that wouldn't steal from you, steal you blind. And so it was a real struggle, and we learned that I'll never do that again. This is a lesson that nobody needs to learn, and if you do, you're going to learn it the hard way if you don't do your homework before you sign papers. So, I guess the moral of the story of this lesson, never believe what sellers tell you when they really need to sell the property. That was my mistake. And even since then, I've bought houses where I listen to people, I listen to their sob stories, I I listen to them cry and tell me why they're selling and how they need the money. And, I've fallen into that. Don't. You can't save the world. Don't try to save the world. You have got to do what's logical and what's best for your family. You can help their family sometimes you can't. And don't get caught up in the drama and end up doing a bad deal, because that's not good for your family and your future. I know that for a fact. I've done it a few times. Like my mentor told me, when we go to a seller and we want to look at buying their property, we're there to help them out of the quicksand. They have a problem in their life. They have an issue. It's why they're selling. We're there to help them out of the quicksand. We are not there to join them in the quicksand, nor are we there to replace them in the quicksand. In my cases, I replaced them in the quicksand. I let them out of the quicksand and I jumped in. That was not a smart thing to do. But being inexperienced, I didn't know any better. In those early days, I had no training. You have to understand that. You do. Don't make the mistakes. Listen to what I'm telling you, because this is important. When you're talking to a seller, when they start pumping blue sky, just sit there and smile, listen to what they got to say, but then go do your research. Don't be in a hurry. When you're buying something like that, like I did on the resort and like I did on the convenience store, that was a pretty good sized project for me at that time. I should have taken my time, done my research, if it took 2 weeks, because now I look back, nobody else was going to buy that, either one of those properties, because there was issues and I didn't realize what they were. So if you buy the blue sky, sellers will try to shove up your nose. It could cost you a lot of grief, and possibly it could bankrupt you if the project was big enough. Please don't do that. Like I said, let's recap. Don't listen to what they have to say and take it as gospel when they need to sell. As a matter of fact, don't take their word as gospel no matter what. You've got to do your homework. Your life depends on it, your financial life. Don't take the chance that you're going to do damage to your family simply because you got caught up in the seller's drama or into their story that really has nothing to do with you. You can't save the world. Don't try. Help them out of the quicksand. Do not replace them in the quicksand. That's one of the best lessons you could ever be taught. And that will happen on single-family houses. I know. I've seen it too many times. So I wanted to make this point because I've talked to some people recently that have had this situation in their life, and they got into a deal that wasn't a good deal for them simply because they didn't do their homework. And I talked to all too many students that don't do their homework. They look at price only, and they base their buying decision on price. And I don't know how many times I've got to reiterate, there are many, many aspects of the property you have to look at to know exactly if it's a good deal or if it isn't. You want to get that jewel. You don't want to get the junk. So that's an important point that I want to make. And I hope you'll listen. I hope you'll take advantage of what I just said if it ever appears in your life. So that's going to wrap up today's episode of my podcast for this week. I hope you're finding value from the topics that I'm giving you, because I invite you to head over to my website, larryharbolt.com. I'd like you to register to keep up to date with more ideas and tips to help you become a better and smarter real estate investor. Now be sure and tell a friend and leave me a review on the podcast player that you're listening to me on right now. Your reviews help me know what information I provide to you, if it's valuable or not. So I hope you'll have a great week. I'll see you next time. This is Larry Harbolt.
Thanks for listening to the Real Deal Podcast with Larry Harbolt. To learn more about investing in real estate, head on over to larryharbolt.com and register for his educational tips and articles delivered by email.